Hello YouTube, welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Kevin and this is the America First Pill channel. So I want to discuss another video here about how do Republicans motivate Republican and those who consider themselves more conservative leaning in regards to those who are, whether they're hardcore Republican to just being kind of more Republican leaning, conservative leaning, whatever you call it. Usually Republicans are more on the right. So how do we motivate the Republicans who are they're usually considered the MAGA, or they call it the true MAGA base, the ones that Trump brought out to vote for maybe for the first time in 40 years, or they either they vote every 4 years, and Trump brought a lot of those over from the Democrats, because a lot of Trump peeled away a lot of the working class to vote for Republican for Trump. They call those the Obama Trump voters, particularly in the Midwest, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. But how do we motivate Republicans to come out? How do we motivate low propensity? Sorry to sound redundant, but how do we do that? Because that's always the common question. How do we do that? Because when Trump's not on the ballot, these specific voters don't come out. We know the really engaged Republicans, the more traditional Republicans, to the grassroots who are very involved, they'll vote. The high propensity types like that. But, you have a segment that don't vote all the time. And that seems like it's pulling teeth to vote unless it's Trump on the ballot. And Trump did. So how do we do that? Well, I see this on X going around. I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for that. No. I love that. I voted for this. I didn't vote for that. I voted for that. Good job, Trump. See a lot of that going around, particularly from like the influencers. And what did we actually vote for? Because it's like we're seeing a little divide about, you see MAGA kind of splitting a little bit about what we voted for. And well, it's clear that we do have differences for sure. And it kind of Charlie Kirk kind of molded it together between the different Republican coalitions and the different fragments of the GOP together to beat Kamala Harris, to unite behind Trump, and it did. And Trump was able to pull in a lot of people who are not traditional Republicans at all. If they're conservative, they're low propensity, they don't vote all the time, or they might have been kind of disinfected Democrats who are no longer can affiliate with the Dems anymore. So some of them might have voted for Dems still down ballot, or they don't vote at all anymore. They haven't voted in decades, maybe since Ronald Reagan. So Trump brought in a lot of people, a ton of people. And, a lot of people will say that Trump, there's the famous quote, it's the economy stupid, is the thing that generally voters decide on. And I hate to say this, but the economy is important, but I don't think the economy in itself wins anymore. I think largely because the reason Trump won on the economy is because you had a track record. In his first term, there was a low unemployment rate, the wages were up, inflation was lower, and people voted for him on that. So you had a track record. That's why Trump was able to win on the economy. Now, and the voters are kind of split on what a good economy is. So, and for a lot of Republicans, for them, it's the stock. For a lot of I'm talking about. I think it's the elites, not the generic voter. But for the people that lead the party, all they seem to care about is the stocks and the GDP. And while the GDP really, I don't really think is the economy, and that can be artificially inflated. And if only rich people are benefiting off of it, that could mean rich people are benefiting. That doesn't, but the middle class is not. Their lives aren't getting any better. Things still going up. Then and they're being drained. Then I'm not. You can't really. I don't think voters care at all about the GDP. I certainly don't. So I think. So with that being said, I think Trump won because of immigration. Biden left the border wide open. 20 million people. We have so many people here. We don't know exactly how many people are in here. I've heard something about between maybe 50 to 60 million. That might be the guess total. In addition to the 20 million that Biden allowed in just by his open border policy. He did nothing about the border. They didn't do anything. Or whoever was controlling them didn't do anything. And it's designed to import a new base so they can get them grand amnesty so they can vote. Path to citizenship so they can vote. So how do we motivate voters? Okay. How do we motivate voters? Because I do think it's immigration. A lot of young people actually agree with Trump on immigration, particularly young males. They're being screwed over by people who aren't supposed to be here, and they're being replaced by people, foreigners, just so corporations can save a few $1,000s. It's cheap labor. And that's what they're pissed off about. And, Trump didn't really run on abolishing H-1Bs as a whole, but there is definitely increased pressure to scrap the program altogether because big business has rigged the system in their favor for cheap goods. So yes, people are upset about that. And obviously you want the criminals out, which that's what the priority is. And I think we want to get just anyone who broke the law out of here. And I think we need to do that. Because I think if you don't, you risk amnesty passing. And I think there's too much pressure on Trump not to cave on that. There's pressure by his donors to get him to cave on that. But whether Trump does it, even if Trump doesn't do it, if he doesn't, start getting the deportation into the millions, then you're wishing at amnesty passing. And I said this on a previous video that people say it will destroy the economy. Well, I hate to say it won't if you just hire Americans. That's the problem solved. Hire Americans. There's a lot of young men who want jobs but aren't given a shot. So I don't want to believe. I definitely don't want to hear the excuses when you're firing people. When you have the people, you fired them just to get H-1Bs. So yes, that has to be a thing. And also, voters want transparency. Trump ran on, I'm going to drain the swamp. Now, there's a lot of ways to drain the swamp. Okay, I'll have to post that on another video about things. How do we drain the swamp? When we're going to need laws to do that. But I do think the Epstein files, potentially, if we use them right, can potentially be a way to bring down the system. But I think what voters want is transparency. And it ain't just the Epstein files either. There's a lot of corruption. There are people who did the Russian hoax on Trump. January 6th, 2020. A lot of people, the election this was not a fair election in 2020. People want transparency. They want arrests. And that's why they voted for Trump, is because they're counting on him to drain the swamp. They don't want him containing it. They want him drained. So I feel like you're going to have a lot of expectations. And that's the thing as well. So How do we motivate voters to vote? So, transparency, okay? It looks like the rest of the Epstein files were released, which all of it now, I think there was another batch that was released um, that had names, I guess. But now, okay, good. Finally, Trump did keep his promise. He said he'd release them, and he did. Regardless of what you think, he did it. He kept his promise. I don't think this would have been released by any other president. So, again, Trump did do something. He did do it. So, transparency, and that means Bondi needs to do investigations. If you need to investigate, then do it and arrest people. I know you can't just go arrest people without evidence, but there are a lot of people out there that have evidence that they should be arrested. That means Tim Walz and Fry for what they did in Minneapolis with the fraud, the Medicaid fraud. The Clintons, Adam Schiff. A lot of people need to be put away, and that's what people want, is the swamp being drained. Regardless of the party, there's a lot of corrupt people on both sides that money launder, that need to be put away. And I do think, fortunately, Bondi is a potential plant, but that's what people are expecting. So if Bondi can finally do her job and arrest people, that's going to motivate voters. If the Republicans will grow a spine, nuke the filibuster, you have nothing to lose at this point, Dems will do it anyways, and pass the SAVE Act so we can secure our elections, no voter ID, proof of citizenship, and even mail-in ballots. That will help motivate voters, because I think integrity is one of the biggest issues right now. Voters do not trust our system, and if they feel the system's already chosen, they don't feel they have a reason to vote. That will motivate voters. The SAVE Act will motivate voters, the environment. So that's how we motivate voters, and I think a lot of it's Republicans going on offense and actually being tough, doing what they promised to do. That's how you motivate your voters. So the economy, here's the thing with the economy. It's important, and you're already seeing case of the economy getting better, and it will. But immigration, draining the swamp, arresting people, the corruption, and securing our elections right now, I believe, is the most important part of this administration going forward. And I think with securing the elections, if we can't count on that, we can't have confidence in our elections, then nothing else matters. Because if Dems take power, they'll make sure we can't ever win again, no matter who we run. So yes, that's important to motivate voters. You also have to be pro-manufacturing. You actually be pro-manufacturing. Trump got a lot of working class voters, which is a voter group that Republicans didn't do very well with, is working class. Blue collar, a lot of them are unions. Either way, they're usually culturally conservative. They love their country, but they're not traditionally Republican. Some of them they're more than they used to have been, but they still won't necessarily just come out for any Republican. So, being pro-manufacturing and tariff is important. So you got to support those things to motivate those voters if you want to keep those voters. Because it would be a shame that if this administration and it's not just Trump, it's not Trump at all, okay? Trump's messaging, I think, could be better. And I will say it if I feel it's needed to be said, but it would be terrible if the incompetency was so bad that Trump gets impeached. And even if not impeached, it gives voters a reason to try to even think of voting for Gavin Newsom, or possibly, can you imagine a Kamala Harris AOC ticket? That's what I'm hearing floating. I mean, really, them? Really? Republicans better wake up. Because right now, if the SAVE Act doesn't get passed, something on election integrity, the base is going to get demoralized and you may see low turnout. So there you go. So anyway, that's all I have. But hey, if you like this video, please like, let me know what you all think. How, if you have anything to add, how can Republicans motivate their base? And if you like this channel, please subscribe and hit the bell for notification. The Red Pilling channel out.